Hey, welcome back to Driver 88. It was 10 years ago now that I drove my very first McLaren road car in 2015, and that was a 570S. At the time, McLaren Auto was having a massive expansion. They were bringing out a whole bunch of new models, and it seems like the brand was rising ever higher. At the time, the Formula One team was absolutely languishing in 9th place. The F1 team was really struggling 10 years ago. Now fast forward to today. The two have completely swapped place and they are different businesses. McLaren Auto gone from selling 4,800 cars in 2018, 2023 they just sold 2,180. Whereas the F1 team has come from 9th place to potentially 2 back-to-back Constructors' Championships in F1, potentially. So today we're going to ask why that has happened to McLaren Auto, what's going on with that brand that I love so much. I'm going to talk about my experience owning 2 different McLaren Auto cars. And we're going to ask this question. There's a 765LT which was released in 2020. Is this potentially, or unfortunately, the peak for McLaren Auto? Where are they going in the future and can they dig themselves out of a bit of a mire? We'll find out. This is Driver 88. So one of the reasons why McLaren Auto got themselves into a little bit of trouble in the 2010s is that their expansion across their model range and their investment was a little bit too fast and too strong. And they weren't able to properly look after customers and give the sort of level of dealership support that you see for Lamborghini and Ferrari. By 2021, they actually had to sell their HQ to free up cash flow. And in 2024, it was the Bahrain Sovereign Wealth Fund who took full ownership of McLaren Auto. And then just 6 months ago, the entire company was bought by CYVN, and that's an investment fund from Abu Dhabi. And hopefully they're going to bring about a turnaround in the support, new models and new investment into McLaren Auto. Let's talk aesthetics. Now, arguably, I think the looks might have actually peaked for McLaren Auto in 2020 with this LT as well. If you weren't aware, the gentleman, Robert Melville, who designed the Super Series and Sports Series from 2015 or so onwards, has left the company in 2022. So we don't exactly know where the design language will go from here. Now, until the W1 gets produced and hitting the roads, the LT is still the fastest straight line McLaren that's ever been built. This car is claimed at 755 horsepower, but in reality, if you strap it to a dyno, it's making more like 800 horsepower at the crank. And in a straight line, it's one of the few cars that I've ever seen run a 9.8 on a standard road. And in perfect conditions, on a perfect drag strip, it'll hit 9.33 seconds, which is absolutely incredible. And no McLaren has really copied that since. Maybe the W1 will be able to hit the 8s. Now, despite being a straight line monster, the LT really is a track-focused supercar, and it proved to be a bit of a maniacal enigma when third-party testing is taken with this car. It seems like so many people struggled to put the power down and get the front to grip because the car was just so aggressively powered and so aggressively geared. Out of the 6 tests against the 720S, 2 of those it beat handily, but another 2 other tests with third-party testing, the 720S actually beat this car. And that's largely due to conditions and just not being able to put the power down and this car being so incredibly twitchy. But to finish that off, I've also seen a test with a driver that wasn't even a sponsored time or by a professional racing car driver, where the LT beat a Senna on one of the racetracks. So this car, ultimately, if you've got the right conditions, hot new tires, and an absolute freak at the wheel, then you'll be basically doing the best lap times that McLaren Auto has ever garnered. Now, there is a bit of an elephant in the room with McLaren Auto, the reliability and fit and finish issues that many people have had over the years. One thing I can say, having owned 2 cars, my 570S was pretty much trouble-free for the year that I had it, and I put 7,500 kilometers on that car. My 720S, much like many other early 720Ss, was riddled with quite a number of issues. In fact, a number of the panels on my car were painted the wrong black. So I had two different black shades on one car, and I had a bunch of other annoying software issues. Having said that though, I know friends that have owned these LTs and 720Ss that have had no issues whatsoever and enjoyed them for many years. McLaren seems to be a bit of a whipping boy when it comes to this stuff, because a lot of people tune them and blow them up and then kind of blame McLaren for it when they're already highly tuned engines. I've got a friend who's a head McLaren tech and now he has his own shop. We're going to get him on the channel next week to talk about buying a used McLaren in future. The last thing I will say is I've been sitting in hundreds of Ferraris and Lamborghinis over the last few years, and I'll tell you that for every 5 McLaren owners that complains about various issues they may have had, there's about 25 Ferrari owners that will not tell you anything about all the software, hybrid issues, trim, fit and finish issues that they have. So keep that in mind. Okay, let's talk money. So when this car came out in 2020, the sticker price was 665,000 Australian dollars. We pay a lot of money for supercars here. If you fast forward today in 2025, a Temerario and a 750S cost essentially the same money. So without any options, it seemed like a good deal today. Now, most of these cars won't even remotely be sitting at that price for their sticker because they had things like this, an $80,000 carbon roof snorkel, which funnily enough is a lot quieter than the roof snorkel in the 620R that we drove before. Most of these cars will have carbon packs on the exterior and interior with at least $100,000 between them all. Once you add the snorkel, exterior bits, telemetry, maybe even a $160 ashtray, you'll get yourself to over $800,000. And the vast majority of these cars, across the 7 that I've seen for sale, the average price is about $840,000. So some of them have been sitting on the market for a while. This one at Cavallo Prestige is actually the cheapest LT you can buy, but it has the snorkel and a whole bunch of carbon. So it kind of looks like a pretty good deal. My pick personally would be a Spider. Anytime I look at McLaren, I always prefer the Spider because they're only a tiny bit heavier than the coupe and you get to hear that amazing crack from the exhaust. Now, for a number of years, people were kind of perplexed by the McLaren lineup. People used to often say on social media, there's a new McLaren every 6 months and they all just don't make sense. Thankfully, that lineup has sort of been reduced now. Quite simply, you've got your sports car, the McLaren Artura, you've got the supercar, the 750S, you've got your Grand Tourer, the GTS, and of course your halo car, the W1, which is beginning production very soon. So things have kind of been condensed and made a little bit easier to understand from that perspective. It might help them sell cars going into the future. No, I'm getting literally moved with the wind. Okay, it stopped. All right, enough yapping. You have to be careful with these Trofeo R tyres. The last time I put Trofeo R tyres on the rear of my 720S, I almost left this planet. Let's take it for a drive and see if this LT is potentially the peak of McLaren. I loved the 620R and the 675 LT Spider we drove. I think this might top those two cars though. Okay, getting in of the LT, of course, is a fair bit harder than the 720S, which I always found incredibly easy to get into, but that's normal. These buckets, I need to probably order the XL size because my hips are just pushing up against the sides. This car obviously is incredibly focused, and I like the fact that we've got a little bit more sound and a more aggression, because recently I took the McLaren Artura on track and I was driving that thing at about 230 kilometers per hour and I could talk with a whisper to the person next to me. It's just too quiet, that car. This car is the way a McLaren should be, in my opinion. Now, one other thing I love about McLarens is how good the visibility is. And what's funny is that in optioning the roof snorkel, you're getting rid of so much vision behind you. But one of the best things about driving a McLaren is you're so far forward that you can place the front wheels with such accuracy because you can see the top of the wheels right there. It's not like an AMG where you have the front wheels so far ahead of you. Sport mode now, incredible response. You can spin the rears at any gear at any time. I've spun the rears of my 720S at 180 kilometers per hour with these Trofeo R tires, so you really need to warm them up and be careful. But that is all part of the fun, because this car is so aggressive and so agile. You know, we're talking 14 or so 100 kilos curb weight with 800 horsepower. It is truly incredible. The gear shifts have just gotten that more aggressive, and for the people that find this too much, the 750S is a lot more well-rounded. Up comes the wing. This car will run comfortably to 300 kilometers per hour without any let up whatsoever in acceleration. I can tell you because I've done it a number of times at Phillip Island in my previous McLarens, and this is just that extra step on. Now, one of the reasons why I love McLarens over Ferraris and Lamborghinis, it's the steering feel. In a Lamborghini, and most modern Lamborghinis, their steering feels artificial and robotic. In my opinion, a lot of modern Ferraris have this incredibly too high ratio and too twitchy steering, whereas I feel like a McLaren for me is the best of both worlds. You can really feel the front tires and what they're doing and how much grip you have, and it's satisfying to take corners even at relatively low speeds because you don't feel disconnected to the front of the car. Even though you've got so much power, you pretty much steer these things from the rear of the car. You know, even though this is incredibly aggressive, there's carbon everywhere, and it's pretty loud in here, I don't find it too uncomfortable. Like, compared to an STO, I think this has better headroom, better visibility, and you can put this thing in comfort mode and drive it very sedately, or you can also, you know, do what it's for. This car is addictive. I don't want to give this car back. We've driven so many supercars on the channel in the last year or so. This is the one that I don't want to give back the most. You know, I put the title of this video, has McLaren Auto peaked with this car now 5 years ago? I hope not. I hope they keep making brilliant cars like this that are exciting, have lots of feel, and look like this. Now, it's no secret that I absolutely love this brand, and I love it for a whole bunch of reasons. There's something about driving these compared to a Lamborghini and Ferrari that I think has a unique flavor of its own. It also has, of course, incredible racing history, but I would implore you to watch the McLaren documentary from 2017 about the life and racing times of Bruce McLaren. It's truly inspiring David vs. Goliath story from a man who not only had a disability, but came from the whole other side of the world in New Zealand and raced so successfully at such a young age and built this incredible legacy that we see in these road cars. I'm really keen to see this turnaround and what is going to happen with this new ownership. But in the meantime, I think the 765 LT is currently its zenith and its current peak for the road cars. Who knows what's going to come in the next year or so. In the meantime, this is Driver 88. I'll see you next time.